I think she's my height. Just the way she did the camera. I'm like, who are you? You're little.
I was 19 on mine. You had no idea. You didn't even remember. Not wrong.
All right, we were talking about the feathering system, and I was writing notes for you because we already went over how it works. So this is what you wanted, so this is what you're going to get. Hand already hurts. Utilizes a push button rather than a lever. To feather an unfeathered prop. If you remember, on most planes, you just take the handle that says prop and just keep pulling it all the way back. There's usually a detent or something that keeps you from inadvertently going into feather while you're flying it. Because that's not good. Oops, that was way up there. Okay, I didn't want to put that. So A.
Is there like the critical zone for feathering? Like if you go into feather while you're flying, there's like a certain time that you can be in there, and then you have to like service it, or
It's critical engine out. You want to talk about critical engine out?
What do you want to?
A 1 minute thing. So in an engine that has two right rotating, if you have a right and a left, you don't have critical engine out, do you?
Correct.
Okay, so they're both normally turned to the right. Most twins turn to the right. I only know of a few that one goes right and one goes left. What is the one you fly? They both go?
No, they both go to the right. It's just the Seminole, I think it's
Yeah, that's the only one I could think of.
Yeah.
The Seneca.
Seneca.
Piper Seneca is the only one I could think of. So at a certain speed, below a certain speed, you have critical engine out, which is which one?
The left.
Left. So
Most critical.
see, that's why I needed you to tell the story. So when the left one dies below a certain speed, and that's the blue arc, right? It says below the blue, or?
No, the blue line is your climb speed, your single engine climb speed.
Ah, okay.
The VMC is your minimum controllable airspeed, below which you don't have enough rudder authority to counteract that yaw tendency.
So that's not the blue line. I thought it was blue line. Okay. See, I don't fly twins. So if you are below VMC, then with the critical engine out, what is it on the other one? You do have enough rudder authority then? Or do you still have...
Well, it's just higher. I mean,
Okay.
It's just the speed was actually lower, right? So it's...
Yeah.
You could... you're not going to get there at the same speed. You're going to get there at a lower speed.
Okay. So you lose critical engine and you do that kind of a thing?
Yeah, you know, there's
this feather.
this really perfect video of a King Air that was, it's like in South America, Colombia or Honduras someplace, and they had an engine out, and they were turning. I think that we had mentioned in class, in terms of which way the bank, I think.
Okay.
So they were turning the wrong direction, and they decided that they weren't going to make the runway. So they brought the asymmetric power in to go around with a bank in the wrong direction, and it was like 2 seconds. They were inverted and in the dirt.
Whoa.
It's like, it was really fast because they were slow and they just
Yeah.
crammed in their power.
So to answer your question then, when can you feather? Well, you have to be above that controllable airspeed before you can feather. But after that, hey, feather whenever you want.
And there's no adverse effect.
Well, you're gonna yaw pretty bad.
But feathering, if the engine fails, is going to help you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so as long as you're... We'll talk a little bit more about it in the next kind of segment, but I guess, yeah, if you lose an engine, you're supposed to feather.
Yeah.
You just don't want to lose it. You just don't want to... You don't want to lose an engine below a certain speed, but sometimes you don't get that choice.
Yeah.
You know, if it happens, it happens. You just don't want to be there, so... All right?
So
Yeah.
once the engine you press the button, about how long should it take for the prop to go to
I only, as a mechanic, I only do them on the ground. So I don't know, and it happens pretty fast. I mean, it's
Is it
5,
like
10
it's-
seconds and it's feathered.
So it's not as fast as that air check one.
The what?
The one on the yellow stand with the air connect. And it-
Console that you have hooked up.
Yeah, you have a lot of forces going on. You got to get the oil up through it. It's not much slower than that,
Wow, that's pretty quick.
I guess. I don't know, that one, yeah, that one's pretty quick, but that one also goes on like a PT6 turbine engine of some sort, so it's a little different. But yeah, when I feathered piston engines, I mostly work on pistons. You feather them, it's 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a long time. And then if you want, we can run the big hydromatic by the tool room, but that moves at its own pace because of a mule, and it just takes a long time. But that's not indicative of how long it normally takes. It's just the oil is slow. Let's see. When a button is pressed, a holding coil holds the button in until the feathering operation is complete. Holds the button in until the feathering operation is complete. Well, how does it know when it's complete? Pressure. The button energizes a solenoid to an electric motor that drives a pump to supply 600 psi to the prop. Let's see, oil for the feathering pump. Feathering pump is supplied from the engine tank. And remember, we're talking radials most of the time, so the tank is not in the bottom of the engine, it's somewhere else remotely. Supplied from engine supply. And as I was writing, I'm thinking, well, does it have to be the engine supply? I mean, couldn't you just mount a tank right there next to the feathering pump, wherever that might be?
Extra weight for turbines.
Was that?
That's what you do for turbines.
Well, there you go. That's what you do for turbines. I didn't know that. They have their own feathering pump.
And then it's hydraulic fluid, it's not oil.
For a feathering pump?
The C-130 is like that. I don't know what these C-130s are like.
These ones
The
all
C-130s
have a
are-
single tank, I guess. That's what he was saying. Or no, the prop control is all off engine oil, actually. That's what he was saying.
Yeah. Is that the C-27 or the C?
The C-27, yeah, that's off engine oil.
Well, which makes sense because you have a governor running off the engine oil and the
It's all
drain
right
and all
there.
that stuff.
Yeah.
But talking about this old-timey stuff, I mean, couldn't you just mount a tank somewhere back in the tail with a feathering pump?
Extra weight.
It would be, but how much extra weight would it be than running line all the way up? I thought of another problem. You'd have cold oil back there.
Yeah.
You want your oil warm.
Yeah.
So that was the problem I saw. You'd have to heat the oil up somehow. It's not to say they don't do it. It's just
When I say that the feathering pump, the whole system on the C-130, we're talking like H models from the 60s and 70s that had its own system. So all of the prop hydraulics was independent.
Of the engine?
Yeah.
Oh, that is weird.
Its own reservoir, its own fluid.
So the governor actually pulled oil from a separate source
Right.
and operated it that way. Wow. What engine is that?
Just an Allison
Allison.
C56.
Okay, I wouldn't even
Phil
know.
asked me the other day, I'm like,
It's a
That's fine.
It's a lot of years.
It's a T-56.
You could have made up anything out of it. T56?
It is a T-56. That's what they were saying over there.
And that's that cutaway we have.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is not a big engine. Not that big
The
around.
Rolls Royce that they had over there. It's like they have these giant nacelles, and it's not that big of a.
It's always shocking. Let's see, the high pressure. From the feathering pump. Feathering pump shifts. Oops. I don't want to write that. High pressure from the feathering pump shifts the high pressure transfer valve in the governor to hydraulically remove the. Oh, yeah, it does. Shifts the high pressure transfer valve. Transfer valve in the governor, not the one in the engine. The governor to hydraulically remove the governor from the prop. Got it? So I got to move.
Yes.
Yes. The high pressure is then diverted. Is then diverted. I'll put sent. Sent to the piston to drive blades to feather. When the piston stops moving, the pressure builds. To over 600 psi, and at 650 psi it will trip a pressure cutout switch and shut off the motor. I want to say the motor, electric pump. So I'm very specific. And the blades are held at feather by aerodynamic forces. Got it?
Kevin,
Yeah.
so from the way the book made it sound, the Propeller and Controls book made it sounded like all the pressure bled off from the propeller. Like there was no pressure in the propeller whatsoever, and it's solely held in feathering by aerodynamic forces.
That's why I wrote that.
Okay.
Blades are held in feather by aerodynamic forces.
Okay, so there's no pressure inside the.
Not, yeah, it kind of bleeds off. Okay, unfeather. All right, how do we unfeather? Which button is it?
The feather
Same button. Okay, feather button. Is pushed in and held, pushed in and held in by the pilot. Why?
Holding oil, holding that electric pump.
Holding coil won't work it. Since holding coil will release. Release at 650 psi. There you go. So yeah, you push it in, and what it'll do? Start the pump. Pump will start working. Prop is in feather. It'll make it stay in feather. Build up to 650 and pop the thing out, the button out.
Back in.
So you push it back in. Does the same thing over and over and over.
Hold it.
So feathering button. Or the FB. Oops, I didn't want to write feathering button. I want to write feathering pump. Feathering pump. Feathering pump will run and build up to a pressure beyond 650. And then because the button is held in, cutoff will not work. And pump continues to build pressure. Oops, this extreme pressure will cause the distributor valve to shift and reverse normal oil flow. To prop. Okay, now it's backwards. The oil that used to go to the front of the dome goes to the back. One that used to go to the back goes to the front. High pressure oil. Oil is then directed to the opposite side of the piston and unfeathers the prop. Opposite side of the piston and unfeathers the prop. When prop starts to windmill, release the feather button and prop returns to normal operation. So when prop starts to windmill, release button, and prop returns to normal operation. And the distributor valve will bleed off pressures that exceed 750 psi. Let's see here. I crossed this out, but I'm going to combine some stuff. So some props, like I said, have beta range. And thought I actually defined it at some point. Yeah, I know I said that. I thought I actually wrote it in here somewhere. So we'll just call it that. Reversing prop, beta range. Oops, we'll do down here, beta range. 0 degrees to negative degrees. And the way you put a prop into beta is kind of cool. So when you feather a prop, you grab the blue knobs and you pull them back past the detent. And when you go past the detent, it goes into feather, right? It's just a single position, just, oh, feather, okay. But when you're working with the beta range, you're actually going to use the throttle side. So imagine you're coming into land, right? And so when you come into land, one of the things you always make sure is that your props are in high RPM, full forward, high RPM, low pitch, because if you do a go around, that's where you want to start your climb, right? You don't want to give it full throttle and find out, oh shoot, I'm all the way back on high pitch, and we got really high manifold pressure, low RPM. That's not good. So you bring your props up, so you do your go around, but you come in, but instead of doing a go around, you land, and as you're landing, you got your throttles, near idle. So you come back, touch down, and then pull the throttles beyond a detent. There's usually a solenoid of some sort that will lock the throttles out, so they'll only go back to idle, like a normal idle. But when the aircraft sits down, there can be sometimes they call it a wow switch, weight on wheels. I call it a squat switch. So you have scissor links on the gear or something on the gear, like a strut that extends, goes down, some sort of thing that senses that there's actually weight on the wheels. The aircraft has touched down and some weight has hit it, which will release the solenoid that is holding the throttles, and then you can go past that, and the more you pull them back, it's throttle. The more you pull it back, the more throttle you get, but at the same time, it puts the props into beta range. You just keep coming back, and then they go into beta range. What's that Italian thing you fly?
TechMap.
Yeah, it probably doesn't have beta range, does it?
No, the C-130.
It's what the C-130 does. Okay, so C-130. You were a flight engineer or pilot? Pilot. Okay. The levers that you have. You have 3. Basically per engine, condition, prop, throttle.
No.
Is this a different type of?
Yes. So
Okay.
you had throttles and you had condition levers.
Okay.
So the condition levers were basically just feather and air start.
Oh man. Okay. This is totally different then, isn't it? Like from a King Air?
Yeah, I mean it was different than the King Air, but everything else was automatic.
Okay.
So that range in between
Yeah.
was always at 100%, right? So it was constant speed, but that speed was 100% all the time
Okay. So let's go back to this. So you had which levers?
with throttles and condition levers, and that's it.
Oh wow. Okay. So your condition lever, you had 2 positions,
Correct.
which were
Air start
okay.
and feather.
And feather. I got it right.
Correct.
Pull it back to feather.
Yeah. So that piece was no different.
So,
going feather.
so under normal conditions, you'd have it in the air start position?
Well, no, I guess there is a run position in between the two.
Okay, thank you. That makes a little, what's air start? In the air, starting it?
Correct,
Okay. And what would that, oh, it would bring the props out of feather.
correct.
Okay. As where, and again, I always want to tell you guys when when I'm the expert and when I'm not. This is not my field of expertise, but a King Air also has, like a King Air, not just a King Air, a condition lever, which is high and low idle. And I'm not even sure if they all have it that way, but condition levers can be high and low, right? High idle, low idle. So you're running your air packs and you need, a lot of bleed airs coming off, generators, and you can put it in high idle.
So we already had that too, but it was a separate button.
But you had it, like high idle. Okay. And then some of these aircraft, and this isn't a rabbit trail, by the way. This is actually the whole thing I go into next. But yeah, I had to explain this. And then some planes will have then the prop lever here. So you have throttle and prop, but you're saying on yours, you just had the throttle lever. So, and what did you say about 100%?
The props were always spinning at 100%.
Yeah.
It was,
So your throttle was, so what did you do with the throttle? Was it actually throttle or was it more like controlling the pitch of the prop?
oh yeah,
Okay, so it wasn't really throttle. You're already at 100%, and so you're sitting at 100% stationary. And then when you want to go, you'd bring the throttle up, and it stayed at 100%, although it has to add power because you're bringing the pitch in and then rolling.
correct.
So did Phil cover this stuff with you guys to any extent?
Not as
or-
much,
No.
but
We talked about starting mostly, but not.
Okay.
So your
Hot start.
throttle is all controlled by a governor essentially, and it's just going to try to keep you at that 100% power.
Yes.
And then you're just controlling your prop.
Yeah, so I guess you could say the throttles were like the prop lever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which
So there's no
is,
spool uptime. I mean, that's normally the problem with a turbine engine, right? Is you
Yeah.
get spool uptime. But because the engines were always 100% and your throttle is actually moving the prop, there is no spool uptime, and the power is, like
yeah, it would make sense. So you're bringing your throttle up. It's keeping it at the RPM is the same, but you really are adding power, as we know, because the pitch is changing, which does take more power to keep it at the 100%. So I can see why you would call it the throttle. So there you go. So
but you read torque.
yes, of course. What I wanted to do here. Okay, so when I talked about beta, like I said, there it is. So I kind of pulled most of that out. So you guys are clear on beta with that, how to do that. So beta is controlled by which lever? Throttle, okay. All right, 14, 15. And I don't want to do too much on this. I talked about the hard sole is used on the PT6, which is really belaboring a point that we've already covered a lot of stuff. But the first thing I go into is how turboprops use different levers than what we're used to. And thank you, Tony. That was kind of cool. The notes I had wrote or that we talked about, like the King Air, which had throttle / power lever, and the condition lever, and also the prop control lever, which had min, max, and feather positions. So it's so close to what you're talking about. The condition lever on this particular plane had the fuel shut off, and then low idle, and then high idle. So low idle is like 51 to 65%, and then high idle is 65 and higher. And then kind of where I go from that, like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's really, everything I tell you at this point, you're just going to be like, you'll forget it because it's not something you want to memorize and you're not going to use it, so you're going to lose it. But I thought it was interesting. So the propeller control lever, the prop RPM lever has, I told you that, max position used when high RPM is desired and governs the speed at 2,000 RPM. What do I want to do? I think there's one test question on here, and the answer is there are 4 governors on the engine. Yeah, but I don't want to write all this. Operating principle remains the same as all. So operating principle of the prop, you already know it. It's the same as everything else. On speed, underspeed, overspeed. Spring loaded and counterweighted to which position?
High pitch.
Talking about a King Air now, PT6.
Oh, you want to go to feather?
So it's counterweighted and, what'd I say? Counterweighted and spring loaded to go to which position?
Feather.
There you go. It's not hard. Oil pressure to go to?
Low pitch.
All right. And again, I don't know if all King Airs are this way, but the particular one I was looking at, 2 modes. You had the constant speed mode,
Constant speed.
and what would be the next one?
Feather.
There you, well, that's not really an operating mode. That's shutdown mode.
Yeah, that's
Idle.
beta.
There you go, beta.
Oh,
So forward, and then ground fine or beta. Uses a second, so they had one governor that limited to 2,000 RPM. Okay. Uses a second overspeed governor parallel to take over if the primary governor fails to keep it at 2,000 RPM, right? And then an overspeed governor, which is preset slightly over. My notes said 2,120.
Very specific.
I had 106% here, but then for some reason I crossed it out, wrote 100. I don't know. And the third governor controls the fuel flow in the event both the prop governors fail. Set to 105 to 106. This governor is also used during beta operation.
Fuel flow to what?
Engine. Engine.
Okay. What is it? Why?
So it's
why?
gonna cut fuel the engine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Tony's nodding. I feel more comfortable now.
Yeah, and that, it seems like that was 106.
Okay. Let me see.
106%. Engine power.
So I got 3 governors. All right. So let's see here. Where are we at? We did that. We did that. Talked about this. What is that?
King Air.
There we go. Oops. That's a highly realistic picture. Actually, that is like flight sim or something. It's not even real. So your condition lever, props, power. Not going to go into all that because it's a whole different animal. Yeah. So the PT6 Hartzell counterweighted.
Yeah.
Yes, we have one out there. It's the one that takes the air. Moves prop to low pitch, oil pressure, high pitch, centrifugal spring pressure. Okay, we've covered all that. Saw that. There was a project that when you guys were doing the fixed pitch prop, and there was a point in there where you're supposed to do edge alignment and face alignment, and I pulled it out because there's absolutely no decent data that I can get my hands on that says this is how you check edge alignment, this is how you check face alignment, and since these are things done by prop shops, I have never done it, so I have trouble saying do it this way, right? I don't want to teach you the wrong way, so I'd rather teach you not at all if I don't know. And so anyway, I'd come up with this as kind of all of my research. Okay, what is edge alignment? And that was edge alignment.
Looks like you need a new prop.
It looks like nice.
Oh,
Whoa.
that was a deer.
That's right.
That's a prop strike. Hit
Someone got a haircut.
a deer. See,
Look at all
so
that red dye.
Or the haircut.
this is why you're not supposed to do NDT with that red dye stuff because it just makes a mess all over the plane. That's
How'd that happen?
It looks like 99.
You can't have one get upside down.
Looks like 99.
One's got his wheels out.
Is that a